А ты еще не хлопнул?
Attends.
Yes.
You know the rules of the game.
He did it many times.
Hello. Today we have Филипп Родригез-Жорда as our guest, and I would like to talk with him about things the most essential and interesting for all puppeteers, beginners and those who are professional in their magic occupation. Привет.
Bonjour, Anna.
There are not so many people with whom we can and with whom I would like personally to talk about the most interesting things for myself. Not just, it's not about audience, it's not about our viewers, even though I hope that it will be open for wider public. But there are people with whom I want to talk about things that are interesting for me. So I will be very, very selfish, if you don't mind. And that's why I will try to dig you, and sometimes probably questions will be not very comfortable. So you can find the way how to avoid answering them, or find the way how to
Jump out of the picture.
Okay.
Okay.
We are talking often about the way how we can being disappointed or frustrated or somehow fed up with the profession or with the situation we are in, refresh our point, or to remind ourselves reasons why we are still doing it. And when you talked to students of the summer laboratory of figurative theater, you said that it is very important to keep yourself and to feel yourself and to actually to work, to bring yourself more and more into what you are doing. And one of the advices or recipes you proposed, if something happens, just remember why did you become a puppeteer and how the first idea came. I'm wondering if you remember it and if you can tell if it was a concept or if it was an impression if you watched the show, or if it was some kind of disappointment in the human partners and friends, and suddenly you realize that there is an object life around, and you can refer more to the dead object rather than to alive people. So how did it start? Do you still remember, and do you come to this souvenir often?
Yes. Actually, I had a double beginning. Before discovering puppetry, I was involved into dancing, and I was living in the western part of France in a city called Angers, and it happens that this city is dedicated to contemporary dancing. So there is a contemporary course every other corner. And at this time I was a mechanic.
Car mechanic?
Yeah, I'm a helper. Car mechanic helper. And I started to go dancing, but I always keep saying that if I would have been in Angoulême, which is another city in western France dedicated to comics, I would have done some comics. Just I pushed the next door, and the next door in Angers is a dancing floor. There is a huge famous school there, and so that people spread around the city, and I won't tell any lie. The lie will come later. I won't tell any lie, and not even 1 second I imagine myself as a dancer. I always paid for it. I never imagined that I would get money out of it. Not that I would even think about it. I would say I'm not able to, or this is too this, or this is too much that. Not 1 second. And I went far into it, something like 3 years, and so after some point I took some master class in Paris, or wherever the people in Angers would tell me, you should go there. I would try, applicate, and go. And once I was in Paris for I think a weekend masterclass. And it happens, we went to see a show of a dancer. I remember that was a solo dancing woman. And at some point, a puppet appeared at the very end of the stage. No puppeteer around. I really often, did I saw a puppeteer or not? Like Compenser. And now things turned totally differently. I was totally, like you have a boussole, and the boussole suddenly made it was a shock. But I was so stupid. I didn't make the connection between, dancing is movement and puppets is movement. That's why, forget it. I was just totally appealed by the puppet. For some personal reasons, I moved from this city in Western France to the south, to my born city in the south, which is called Montpellier. And I did a try to go in a social worker school, just a try without believing myself even. That would last more than 6 months. And I don't know which mosquito bite me. All of a sudden I went to in France we have those houses here and there in town called Maison des Jeunes et de la Culture. People can go there and make yoga or make clay things or gymnastic or learning English. Okay, I went there and I said, I'm a puppeteer. Would you have any job for me? And the guy said, unfortunately you're coming too late. I have my program now. Well, you're a puppeteer. I said, yes. So come next week. Maybe I invent some more class and you do something.
But you proposed to teach?
Yes.
Straight away?
To children.
Okay.
And I came 1 week later and he said, yes, I give you a try. And all of a sudden my t-shirt was all wet. Not because of a southern city, but because I realized I went too far into it. And I started doing whatever. There was no internet at this time, so I had to invent something. I couldn't get any first idea of what would be a puppet workshop, 2 hours or 1 hour and a half work. So, and actually I built masks with the people coming. And time passes by, and at this time in Montpellier there was the puppet week from Montpellier in December. And I was of course interested. That would have been my second puppet show. To see something else would have been my second puppet show. And I could see at the end of the program that they were proposed, this very year, they were proposing a professional puppeteer workshop. So I went to the same guy, the guy whom I liked too, and I said, well, I'm almost a professional, so wouldn't you offer me the workshop? You had to pay to go to the workshop.
Yes.
And he said, yes. Okay, go, I pay. I met the people I worked with for the 2 next years. They were a private puppeteer company, and so I made a workshop, really inspiring, totally crazy, and a puppet workshop without any puppet actually, just hands expressing themselves. And then I went to the organizer. I said, well, I would like no lie anymore. That was enough. I said, well, I would like to become a puppeteer, and the lady told me, well, what can you do? I said, well, I'm a mechanic. She said, well, come and you will take care of the truck, and if some puppets are broken, you will. And I went 1 year, and for the second year, I really was invited into the company. Mm-hmm. During the second year, they got to know that a puppet school was opening somewhere, was creating. In the east part of France, they made me up for the audition. I went, and
you got there.
That's how it started.
So I have never heard that you were dealing with the cars and with engines. And do you think it's important for puppeteer, for practitioner, for puppeteer who is actually on stage dealing with puppets, to understand how things are built? So I mean, this your car mechanical experience, or?
I think so. I think it's important because you get the poetic of the material, at least, and if you took part to the construction somehow, you get even the poetic of this special time you've spent doing something. Roman Pasca, a famous American puppeteer, used to say that time in the workshop is meditating time. And at this time, I had this man as a teacher, and I was fortunate to work with Roman for a long time afterwards. But when I was at school, construction was just a stinky moment because you were dealing with resins and plastic stuff, which are not allowed anymore in schools because they are dangerous. When I was dealing with construction that was far away of meditation.
It was very special meditation.
Like that. But it took me a little time, just a little, and I definitely understood what Raman wanted to say.
The description of puppet as a metaphor of something, or a description of puppet, comparing puppet with a different musical instrument is very common, and almost in every book or in every second book you can see that puppeteer is compared with a musician and puppet as an instrument described. But when we speak about different instruments or tools, we know exactly the function of the instrument. For example, we know what hammer is for, and what saw is for, and what violin is for, and what is dentist instrument is for. They have usually very, very local implementation. But about puppet, we always say that this is an instrument and puppeteer plays this instrument. But if violin is for producing sound and hammer is for putting nail into the surface deeper and deeper, how would you describe the function of the puppet as an instrument?
I feel it and I understand it as a link, definitely. Not only because I mostly work with within shows which involve other stage art than puppetry. Puppetry is an instrument which is a link toward myself, and definitely toward the other, because you always can find a common area. Even if you work with, recently I worked with two Baroque lady singer. I was not supposed to talk in this show, of course not to sing, neither to sing, and but we could find. They came with their own references, and we found a way. We found our way.
To do what?
To include puppets, and with a puppeteer not far behind the puppet, in between the two singing lady, and without being illustrative. And well, I don't want to go too far into this example, but what I want to to say that or what I try to develop is the link power of the puppet and of the puppeteer behavior on stage.
This is almost the field that you actually explore, develop, constantly referring and teaching also. This is the relationships between puppet and puppeteer. If not describe like conceptually, if not to give a full picture, can you give some examples, or again probably just hints, what are these relationships? If we speak about the shows, very often puppet and puppeteer, they're in a very concrete and predictable relationships. They can be doubles to each other, they can be the same, they can be partners and two different characters, or they can be distant from each other in time or in space. But if we speak about you and your instrument, what is for you this puppet? What words would you use to describe your relationship?
I really use a puppet to understand. I think that's even the reason I turned myself to puppetry at the beginning. Then it switched a little bit. Mm-hmm. But after 10 years, I started to think, oh, to be a puppeteer is pretty weird. Took me some time to realize it. And all of a sudden I wanted to at least answer within myself why I suddenly, because I told you the story, why I suddenly turned to this area. And I think that my main push was to understand something. I think my first, without being able at all to use those words, and my first appetizer, thirst, envy, desire, was to understand it, see it and feel it as an understanding tool. I don't know this word in English, but empiric?
Empiric?
In an empiric way.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be something
so
I
it's
can
like
work with.
Empiric instrument to understand empiric experience or existential experience.
Exactly.
So, but then it is not connected to the plot at all.
Plot was what means
the story.
Oh no.
Not at all.
No.
So it can be but then if it is a self, it is a self discovery. It is a self autobiography. What you do on stage, not connected to the story.
Maybe also then it took me years, some more years to, maybe because I'm pretty lazy, to realize that the first ever thing I've done in the artistic area was to help a psychomotricity lady. And in the country I'm living in, you have two ways to help psychomotricity. Sorry for my English.
Sorry for my French.
To help people that would need any psychomotricity help. Mm-hmm. You have the regular way, which is to make exercises, mm-hmm. and mostly with the hand. And if the psychomotricien is aware, that can involve the body. And you have another range, totally different of psychomotriciens, which are psychomotriciens psychanalytiques. Mm-hmm. And I was invited by a lady called Marie-Caroline Oudot. I owe her a lot. She invited me.
As a professional puppeteer?
No, she's as a professional puppeteer, I owe her a lot, yeah, mm-hmm. Sorry. But she was a psychomotricienne, psychanalytique. Mm-hmm. And I was invited in a 1 year process with 12 or 13 teenagers, and Marie-Caroline would lead one 3 hours session a week for the whole year. And for this thing to happen, she would need one silent person here, no communication with anyone, not saying anything, not speaking about this before or after.
So she needed just a silent observer or silent participant?
Exactly.
For what reason?
I should have asked. Without this person, the session could not happen.
Of course.
Without.
Yes.
I was not doing anything. Mm-hmm. But without this person, nothing can happen.
Without you. Basically.
Without you. And so that was a serious commitment. If you say yes at the beginning of the year, you have to be sure that you still will be there in June. And Marie-Caroline used to make masks. She would ask the participant to tell a story, so that they were teenagers, girls and boys in with social problems, no mental problems, about to have mental problems, but in deeply social troubles. And so she invited those teenagers to tell stories. Of course, the story they could tell were horrible. And step by step, she would turn the story into something that would become a scenario, but really a soft way, really cleverly. I didn't take any notes during 1 year because I was too stupid, but I pretty well remember the process. So, and at the end, last moment, you had a show, let's call it a show, involving 12 teenagers with masks. Some of the masks, they were like that, and some of the masks, they were as big as the people, those young people. And all the stories, the true story have been turned into a fiction during the year, and the whole of the stories were turned into one, but every participant could recognize which element came from. So a story totally amazing, totally crazy, with no plot. And Marie-Caroline had so much success with this method. The people were healed, definitely.
And you didn't get ill?
No, I didn't, but I was very inspired, very highly inspired by it. So then I kept in touch with Marie-Caroline. And so to have one person here is a psychoanalytic role.
Do you mean that you are involved in a puppet show also as a psychoanalytic in a way? No. I want to say that if after many years practicing this art form, I suddenly realized that what definition would fit the best to my position would be my connection to this art form is an understanding wish. It comes from Marie-Caroline's shock. If we try to...
Am I answering?
You are very, very clearly answering, but because you do answer, you do provoke to go even deeper, and I don't know how far we can go with this. Can you try to define what is your field of exploration? What do you try to understand? Is it, let it be very poetical or very philosophical or very teenage kind of answer? Do you understand why you were born? Or do you try to understand why you are the way you are, or are you trying to understand why we are all mortal? So what is the field that you try to understand, or everything?
I feel to use a picture, because we are speaking a foreign language and I'm not so comfortable with, to use a metaphor, I try to throw bridges, I think. That's my main
picture.
That's my main
Image.
picture, yeah. I try to build bridges. So when I'm in a show, I try to build bridges toward my partners. And some of them, they want to make a bridge toward me also, but some of them don't want. So I have to do the whole job. Like, for example, you're working with actors and they want or they don't want to touch the puppet, even though they were aware of they had to do it. And but it happens that after 1 week rehearsal, they decide that puppetry is pretty difficult, and so they have to deal with puppets, but you will do the job, mainly. You keep finding a solution. I built bridge toward the story. I built a bridge toward the director, and toward myself also. I think it's my main, took me 25 years to even think about it for more than 3 seconds. But I think that's what I'm doing. And basically speaking, shortly speaking about myself, is to understand why bridges were broken.
Mm-hmm. And this puppets as an instrument, do they live in the toolbox, or are they in your dining room? Do you have puppets at home?
Yeah, but they are in boxes. I often open the boxes, but they are in boxes. But I could see that oftenly puppeteers, they don't have puppets on the wall. Some puppet, but not for all year long. Like you have a poster for 10 years. If it's you can have a puppet lying on the shelf, or a broken puppet waiting to be fixed for 6 months, but it's not an exposed puppet. But I have puppets home, yes, for sure. And
but you said often to students, and I somehow got it from you, that we have to be trained, and it's our responsibility to keep our body in shape and to keep our other skills also trained. And as musicians, we have to train every day. How would you train puppeteer yourself, or what would you recommend young puppeteers or experienced puppeteers to do every day? Is it doing something with puppet, with anything with body? What would be training, and if puppets are needed for everyday training of professional skills?
First, to be honest, I don't train every day, but I oftenly work. So I got the chance to be involved in the training. I work with other puppeteers, but really rarely with puppeteer directors. Mm-hmm. And it happens really often that when you are invited as a puppeteer, you're the freak of the group, because you're the weird guy. And I could observe that makes the relationship really short or really bad, or both, short and bad. So when I spot something, I'm the weirdo of the group, I turn the word puppet into instrument, and instrument becomes something that everyone can speak about, not any shaman story. And so, freak, you're much less a freak. Of course, people want to know if you have a puppet in your suitcase. So instrument gets, it's a bass. You can...
It's more common.
Exactly.
And less spiritual.
Exactly. And by the way, calling a puppet an instrument gives a strong feedback. Oh yes, it's an instrument. I shouldn't myself behave as a freak. Oh, ho, 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 I'm doing puppetry. I'm not training any time anyhow, but it's going to be good and understandable to anyone. So calling a puppet an instrument has two side effects which are really important. It turns you into a possible link. I used this word already. And it gives you also what you should be able to do with your instrument. Come on, when you see circus people, they call trapeze an instrument. Oh, and they do train every day. So to answer your question, Anna, I would say that a daily training would be to do somehow something connected to puppetry every day, of course.
What is connected to puppetry? Because for me, sometimes it seems that everything is connected. So it's actually your choice. Because reading the proper book and thinking, reflecting, or finding something that is close to your understanding, it is a mind training.
I used to do jogging. Now I have to stop for a while, but I turned from jogging into Nordic walking, and I practice which part of my body is leading the movement.
So it is basically actor's training, not
Yes.
necessarily.
It's somehow training, but the tricky thing is that a few years ago I've been involved in a Buto class as a participant. I took a Buto class in the middle of nowhere. For 3 weeks, I was going to have a dance class, but it was a shock to realize that Buto is first a mindset, and the teachers wouldn't do any training because you're making Buto, we are making Buto. We could think Buto now, so no training because you already come as a Butoka. Why training? So the class would start like that.
With dancing Buto.
With dancing Buto, with a certain task, but no training. So that was a shock. I was so shocked that I did my training before everyone, but the other also were shocked. Everyone was doing his training before the starting point of the
Before coming to the...
Yes. And after 2 weeks, the teachers used to say, "That's very Buto." What is very Buto? To understand, you need a training and to come before the Buto and do your Buto training.
But was it a good class or was it just a strange course you took?
It was a strange bit. No, I don't know. But no, they were dancers. I was not. I was the puppeteer of the group, and they were dancers. They were actors. But the dancers, they were used to those twists of the mind. So, to come back to your question, no training is also interesting, but no training, not as a manifest, but just as if you realize you have no training. For example, when you perform a show for 200 times, then 200 times, not within 10 years, 200 times within 1 year and a half. It's hard, not because you get tired, of course, but it's hard because you have to invent the same thing a lot of time. And everyone would tell you that one time it happens that you get your inspiration by jumping out of the bus, pushing the theater door, sorry I'm late, getting your costume and going on stage, 3 minutes. Of course, it's not good to do it because you're freaking everyone out. But you get the kick. You're different. And you don't break your arm and you don't injure anyone and so on. The funny thing is that no training is also a training at some point. But speaking about instruments, those days it's a little, you have a fight, but those days it's a little less sharp, but you have the fight of the people, the Western world. They want to express themselves and they don't take any class. They think I'm a puppeteer and they turn to be puppeteers. Well, I just gave this example of the Butoka. Why not? And so that's one team, and the other team thinks that they first have to get a training. Then they will think what to do with. And those two starting points fight against each other, which is stupid, totally stupid. I think the best solution would be to combine, of course. So you need serious education first, I think, at least. Otherwise, you're losing your time.
You say that mostly you are involved as director's assistant and
as performer.
And as performer.
First, as performer, and from time to time.
As a director assistant in the shows where usually puppetry is only one of means of expression among others. So puppetry is not the main element and not the only one.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, if you are invited as assistant of director in this kind of shows, because director is aware that special skills are needed to train or to build puppetry scenes, or because puppetry directors are not aware that puppetry is much more powerful. Do you think that all the puppetry directors actually can do what you do in drama theatre?
It's difficult to answer because most part of time the puppetry directors, they have their own obsessions. So that would need a certain coincidence if they could apply what they do on their own to something else. There is not that much puppet director who are able to go to join some other director, choreographer or whatever, and understand what is needed and invent it. Mm-hmm. Most part of them, they are invited for a certain style. So let's say
they have their own concept of puppetry and they are limited to it.
Or
both, they are fine with it, but they are what it is.
Exactly. So, but I think it's a different option to pretend or to behave or as someone that would answer precisely what is needed, and but it's more different for the. I mean it's more risky for the director who invites you, because let's say a drama director invites a puppeteer assistant, at least for some weeks, maybe not for the whole process, and if this drama director invites someone that he knows the work about, I want something looking like that, something looking like the show you've done and I've seen in Avignon. That's comfortable for the drama director. He invites a puppeteer director and he is able to point the task to do. But if this same drama director invites a puppeteer assistant, telling him, I need a few days to understand and answer, it's more difficult for the guy or the woman to admit it. It's a sort of a risk. So, but it's easy to do it as a performer because people inviting me, they know I'm a performer. they see me in one show, in another show, and they can see at least this, if they are good shows, that you can do totally different things with small puppets or big puppets. Because people, as long as they don't see it, they think that you have your own speciality.
Okay, I will put it in another words. It is the same question. It is very interesting to see puppet shows with the colleagues, I mean with the pure puppeteers, and just to discuss how the language has been developed or what options or what choices director and performer makes. And it's completely different to discuss puppet show with puppeteers and with people for whom puppetry is a new discovery or like a foreign language. When you see puppet shows, do you often see puppet shows where puppetry is fully used?
Not often.
Because very often happens that actually nothing happens in the show, nothing new is discovered. It is use of something that is familiar or completely new, but very rarely puppet theater performances give an impression that something new about relationships between performer and puppet, or puppet and the story is explored. So in a way, puppetry by professionals is taken for granted. For those who are not puppeteers, it is taken as a miracle or as an exotic element. But for puppeteers, it is taken as absolutely normal. And this normality kills half of the puppetry. Because for me, the puppetry is something that has to be approved in every single show, not only on the story level, but also on the phenomenological level, on the philosophical level, because it is a huge, huge revolution to have two creatures who are made of different texture. For me, so that's what keeps me constantly surprised about puppetry. How it happens, why the hell we don't have aliens in our world? We don't have other creatures, we have animals, but it's fine, but we don't have like the same guys as we are, made of different material. But on stage it happens as if it is okay. So that's why I'm wondering if there are puppet theater directors who invite you as assistants when they are interested in a certain tricky aspect of the puppeteering.
No, they invite me as a performer.
Only?
Yes.
You never sit next to the puppet theater director?
No, almost never.
So, does it mean that when we work together with you now, when I invite you to help, to assist, and to collaborate, does it mean that you consider this experience as collaborating with me as with a drama director?
No. Being connected with you is definitely joining a puppeteer. But what I want to say is sometimes people expect that, especially in a company I work with mainly, the director expects that I would give somehow a direction not only for myself. Sometimes it's even really hard because when there is this somehow implicit, non-conventional but admitted behavior between me and the director. So what do you think, Philippe, about something I'm not involved in? At some point the director makes some choices, which is his or her job. No, I have absolutely no problem with this, but cutting this connection. So sometimes I don't understand why, but so this is an anecdote. What I often do is being invited, not as an assistant, but like 4 days, 5 days at the end of a rehearsal to give a hand, to help. But I must say I pay attention. I don't want to do it too much because I do what I call to be the fireman. you give ideas, but it's too late. Most part of time it's too late. It's not possible anymore to do it.
It would be nice to have this kind of person with,
At the
in
beginning.
the very beginning.
At the beginning and the end. Usually I say to those people, well, okay, how much money do you have? 5 days? So, okay, let's do this. I offer 1 day, so now we have 6 days, and we do 3 and 3. And people see that I am so determined, and they say, okay, and then they understand.
But what would you call this profession? I don't know so many people who actually do it, but I do know some. What would you call this occupation? Because director's assistant not at all describes what it means. So it is consulting, or is it first aid, or if it is fireman, or is it because it is a conceptual thinking. Obviously it is so, or it can be Renee Baker calls it troubleshooter, but a troubleshooter, it's when it comes already at the very end. It can be even healer, you know, the show is there, but it does not feel well, you know. It's a bit weak, and it is a bit weak not because of the lack of in building it, but it is because puppetry directing is a very special thing when the content comes independently. It's in a way when the extra meaning comes without being controlled or unintentionally. It just comes because there is another creature on stage. So you are not aware of how the hell did they manage to become these lines, these links. They are there. So it is like this linker. Probably you are a linker, because if you talk always about links, so probably you are the one who is fixing the links. So you just consider it as your natural profession and skills. I don't know how to name it, because it is a magic experience to be able to discuss very important things and to find the person who actually can make it happen. But it is also very generous, because you do make it happen with someone else's children. So it's like a manual therapist. You just fix joins of the meanings. So you just don't care how your role is mentioned in the hand program?
Yes, I don't care. What I don't want is to come 1 day and a half and suddenly I watch my name as an assistant. I don't like that, because it's...
Usually you don't like it because you don't want to be responsible for the whole trouble.
No, it's because I was there 1 day and a half among 8 weeks. So I don't like this over...
Estimation.
Yeah, it's just bullshit. But I don't care. Usually when this issue comes, I say the marionettist, but people don't like it, because that would mean that there is one more marionettist on stage, which would be me, but I would never be. And so
hidden marionettist.
Hidden marionettist, or
transparent, invisible. Visiting. Marionettist visitor. Well, that could be. I have 2 more questions.
Go on.
One question is about audience. You interpret puppeteer as a person in between, or medium, and mediator between author and the puppet, or dramaturg and the puppet, director and the puppet and the audience. So you are mediator and you are in between. I'm wondering, what is the last and the most interesting for me mediation or intervention between life and death? Because for me, puppet theater, specific on the conceptual level, it is theater about metaphysics. So I'm also mostly interested in the death part of our content, even though death is not considered as the end of everything. So I'm wondering if you mean this bringing puppet to life and letting it go and pretending that it is something and then somebody, nothing and then anybody. What can you reflect on this very in-between action? Is it about puppet or is it about something else?
I think it's about something else. It took me a while to realize that I was dealing with death. Once a long while. Once I was, it was in winter, I was touring with Nicola, and we had huge puppets full of sort of straw. And the set came in this area the night before, and it was early morning. So the puppet have been stayed in the truck all night long, and we were so taking the puppets out of the truck, walking 2 meters, and 80 puppets, so a lot, and they were like that. They were frozen because made of straw.
Yeah.
And really beautiful puppet, but really stinky, full of insects and all this stuff. We were having fun because that was much more easy to carry them because they were a piece of wood. That was more easy. And I said to Nicola, I said, "Oh, mais elles sont froides. They are cold." And Nicola came to me and said, "But you know, Philippe, they are dead." I don't know if I recovered. I'm not sure I recovered. So, oh, it was such a shock. I hide it actually.
From him or from yourself?
From him, because I felt stupid to not
being aware of it before.
Being aware of it, and then I hide it to myself because I thought, oh, you really are a freak. Not knowing this and enjoying doing puppetry, come on, there is something wrong and you have to find what. There is some pleasure and some fear but very far. It's not something I think about every day or.
And it is not about the moment when you approach puppet, touch it, hold it, follow it. It is not the content of your real action on stage.
No.
Mediating between life and death. It is a kind of philosophy of the profession on the much, much, much more global.
Yeah, yes.
It is not something that you try to transmit to audience.
No.
Even more, you try to hide it.
No, it's an anchor, something like an anchor. And it took me time to, as a scuba diver, to discover this anchor. When I catch myself following the puppet without even knowing that I'm impulsing the whole thing, this is a very strong moment. It happens from time to time when you really know a show and you really know your partners, they really know you. It happens from time to time that you, without any hocus pocus wish, or just it happens that when it works and when you do a good show, when you do the job you have to do it. So if you do the job you have to do, you're delivering a good show. And when you deliver a good show, it often happens that those moments pops up. You just follow the puppet as if you were the puppet. It's a little childish. And one more time, it's not something I'm looking for. but it happens.
It is not a goal, it is a
Side effect.
side effect.
This is a side effect, definitely.
And it's unpredictable side
No,
effect.
it's unpredictable.
After following your processes with students and having a very wonderful chance to ask you whatever I want, because you are a very nice person and you can be stopped at any moment and asked serious question and you answer very sincerely, I have a feeling that I can understand how you interpret position of director or performer or responsibilities and these zones of the freedom, director and actor. I'm wondering how would you describe the role of and responsibility of spectator? Anyway, it's not about us. We can have a fun as a director and performers, and we can know very well who is in between whom and how, and it is very conceptual art form, puppetry, automatically. But what the hell is that guy supposed to do that comes and sees this freaky art form? What is my responsibility
As a
spectator? In order to read this very art form, not like any spectator who is visiting theater.
I think your responsibility might be to recognize your wish to believe. I think that's the point, because.
But believing not in a religious.
No.
So what
Believing that
unknown exists.
Yes, or that unusual things may happen, and you might be concerned.
It may concern you.
Yeah, you might be. Yes, it may concern you, but we are used to it when we read a book. You read a book, and literature has this power. I think, of bringing bringing you step by step to who knows where. But when you take part to a show, the medium is so different comparing to literature that we shouldn't, as a person involved into the process of a show, we shouldn't forget that someone in the audience, from the audience, knowing that he or she is coming to see a puppet show, is doing a strong first step. Because
we shouldn't forget about it.
We shouldn't forget about this.
If it happens intentionally, if the person chooses puppet theater,
yes,
and goes there being aware that it is not only human characters on stage.
Yes. See, you come, two adults coming to see a puppet show without no children around. They don't come with a children pretext, and they come and see whatever piece, and they don't expect to laugh every other 5 minutes. This is demanding. And this is a cultural matter. Now in France, when you go, things in the theater area, things move a lot. Things always move. But now it never happens that I go somewhere, I perform, and I go back. Now I always have to do something else on top of performing. You have to take care to the audience. Either at the end of a show, you speak, you answer questions.
It's because of the economical reasons, or because of the realization of theatre as art form? So
both.
That it's communication.
Communication, economical reasons, and everything. So, but I do it with pleasure when it's serious. If it's 15 minutes with bunch of teenagers and no teacher, I don't do it. This is very important to get those people ready. Very, very important. Not only to have a good discipline during the show, but to help them to accept the theater they are in and to develop, to enrich their own experience. This is very important.
Спасибо.
Three times and hold. Merci.